Okay, all right. Thanks a lot for the intro, Jeff. My name is Abubakar CL, and I'm the founder at OctiLearn. So just to give you a little bit of background as to how we got started with this is that I've been in the private education space in Pakistan for about 7 years. And I saw, the inefficiencies in the educational framework, particularly the conventional model that we use. A couple of key pain points that I was able to observe, one being the use of standardized instruction, where we're trying to teach all the students in the same way. In simple words, we're asking all of them to go from A to B in pretty much the same way. But, it's well understood that the aptitude differentials are pretty large in any group of students. So, my idea was to map the learning experience onto the specific needs of each individual student so that we can identify their weaknesses at a conceptual level and then generate adaptive content. So we built out a learning management system that's an integrated platform. Yes, Jeff, I'm just going to put that up. So the learning management system that we had, it brings together all the stakeholders where we have the student, parent, teacher, and administrator. And it allows you to customize the learning experience, generates grading analytics to underline the performance areas and conceptual maps of the students, and presents the analytics to all the stakeholders in real time. So it's a lot easier for them to collaborate. But the problem with that was that we would have had to depend solely on school adoption. So we actually pivoted to a learning platform which focuses on personalized and adaptive learning. And that's the one that I'm going to present today. So we've put the learning management system on hold. It is something that we are willing to explore, but because we can go direct to the student with this and also present the solution to schools, there's a lot more versatility in the learning platform and more scalability as well. So the way it works is that we have learning resources that we map onto the target curriculum, and then we provide adaptive learning for the same curriculum. And I'll just show you how it's structured. So right now, we're in the Learning Resources tab in the syllabus, so students can go inside and see the learning objectives that the syllabus has outlined. And we allow them to highlight and add comments onto the syllabus document. The reason being that students typically don't use it as a working document. So, they'll just say, okay, these are the content, these are the topics that are coming on the exam, and, pretty much skim through it. So we want them to use it as a working document that they can update, as they go along the curriculum. And on the right here, they're allowed to check all the learning objectives that they feel they've covered. In the notes section, we basically build content again for the target curriculum, and we cover the entire syllabus, and we allow them to filter through the content to find exactly what they're looking for. For example, it's been a very common request where students have asked me for an equation sheet or study notes. And that, to me, isn't very efficient, where they keep doing the same thing over and over again. So we want them to focus more on the problem-solving side of things and have the content ready to go. So, for instance, if they want to look up the equations for the syllabus prior to an assessment, they can select that tag, and then it'll filter out. This is the prototype that I'm actually showing you. We haven't yet built it. And then we have another type of learning resource, which is the flashcard. And we, again, do the same thing. We map it onto the curriculum and help them go through the steps where they can actually put into different stacks, depending on whether they know it or they don't. And then our partnership with FET Colorado allows us to integrate their science simulations. And I can show you on the website, they have a pretty large collection of simulations that you can engage with. And what we do is that we build content around the simulations. So we allow students to do exploration on their own, but it's mapped very closely onto the needs of the curriculum. And actually what was being shown for Skylight, is something that we're very interested in. And we have a similar partnership with Vivid Learning, where they make 3D models, and we are basically going to integrate their models into our platform and build content around that. And that's a very exciting space because that is not at all being done over here or even in other places. So for instance, if you look at something like this, the problem with STEM education generally is that students have a hard time visualizing things. So they can solve problems, but they cannot extrapolate current understanding. So, in this case where you can activate all of these things and tell them what they're doing. So what we do is that our goal is to connect the visual and mental faculties with regards to the syllabus so that they can really see, what we're talking about. And when they begin to visualize it, it takes them to a much deeper level of understanding. And, they're more creative like that as well. So when you're talking about innovation, I think innovation would significantly be, much more common if students were able to visualize what they've studied. So, we try to do that by providing content mapped onto these simulations. And when you go into the learning pathways, this is where most of the unique stuff will happen. So they go through speed and velocity at first, for instance. That's the first small segment of the chapter on kinematics. They go through the study notes, flashcards, and problem examples, and then get to the diagnostics part, where this is where we identify what weaknesses they have. So they will start and rate their current understanding of the topic and attempt some questions. They get a chance to review these answers and make changes to the final step if they want to. Once they submit, the system grades and then assesses areas of weakness and generates a personalized pathway. And we ask them to rate their experience on the diagnostics. And now when they click and go to pathway, this is where the algorithm comes into play, and we generate content according to their weaknesses. Now, what they're doing as of now, most of the questions that they attempt for the curriculum, are pretty much manual. They don't understand where their strengths and weaknesses lie, except for general understanding. So we then do grading analytics on these assessments that they've taken and make those available to the other stakeholders in real time. And that, really takes care of the problem of delayed intervention, where, the student accountability is mostly, at a future date, where, they will look at the term exam, whether it's A, B, or C, just a grade, but it doesn't go deeper than that. For instance, I could have a B and you could also have a B, but what does that really mean? Does it help us understand what that B entails? Because you could have many different compositions of a B with strengths and weaknesses being spread out over a large area. And what we want is all the stakeholders to be able to understand the spread of each individual, that whether it's a B or it's an A or whatever the grade happens to be, what exactly is the composition of the grade? Where are the areas of strength and where are the areas of weakness, and how can those be tackled differently from one individual to the next? So this is how it all works, and we finally bring that up with a discussion forum as well, where the students can engage and collaborate on assignments and other work that they're doing. We also allow them to communicate with one another through the messaging interface. So basically, it's meant to work as a learning ecosystem where the learning resources are there. We have grading analytics. The stakeholders are all interconnected. And then we further enhance the content offering with visualization through simulations and 3D models. And the conventional model really has a lot of these pieces missing. There's no real collaboration between the stakeholders. As far as data analytics is concerned, that's very minimal, mostly non-existent. And then the problem is standardization, where you have one teacher, teaching 20, 25 students in all the same manner. So basically, this is what we're doing. We're currently in talks with a large private school over here, and they are interested in adopting the platform throughout the central region that has about 43 campuses. And mostly what we are trying to overcome is the funding problem. So we've been speaking to investors, and we're trying to see how we can do something about that and get started with development. So one of the good strengths that we have is that we are very closely connected to the private student audience in the country. So we can actually present the solution direct to them without depending entirely on schools. And that's one of the key reasons why we moved away from an LMS to a learning platform. So once we have it developed, we are confident of good response, because from all the feedback that we've collected from students here, they feel really excited because they have never used a platform like this, at least not here. And when I was at Purdue, we used Blackboard and Quizlet and quite a few others. Blackboard, I think, pretty much has remained the same over the last 10 years. And when you look at the UI, it's really unappealing. And I don't know why that's the case, because the level of success they've had, the scale at which they're operating, you'd expect them to be able to produce a much stronger user experience. But that doesn't seem to be one of their focus areas. And that's going to be it from my side.